Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad. In today's program, we are going to talk about the resolution which was passed at the 21st Extraordinary Session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of Organization of Islamic Cooperation. In this particular resolution, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation has condemned Israel's ongoing aggression in the Palestinian territories, particularly when we talk about Gaza, where the situation tells that so far since 7th of October 2023, 62,744 people have been killed because of Israel's brutality. Over 158,000 people have been injured in its latest of attacks on one of the key hospitals, Nasr Hospital. It actually targeted journalists and medics, and as a result of this Israeli attack, 21 people lost their lives, including 5 journalists as well. And this particular attack has been widely condemned by the world community, including Canada, Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and many other countries as well. We've also seen President Trump saying that, well, I am not happy about it. I don't want to see it. At the same time, we have to end that nightmare, unquote. We have also seen there is a sort of a clarification that has come from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who says that the attacks were a tragic mishap as Israeli forces had killed 61 people overall in various attacks. We'll also be talking about a statement from Israeli military regarding this particular attack also. Let me quote one of the important excerpts from that resolution during the 21st Extraordinary Session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of OIC. Court condemns and rejects in strongest term possible the irresponsible and arrogant statements made by the Israeli Prime Minister regarding the so-called Greater Israel Vision. These statements represent an extension of extremist rhetoric, incitement and aggression against the sovereignty of states, violating international law and the UN Charter, which seriously threaten the regional and international peace and security, unquote. At the same time, the OIC countries have urged the United Nations Security Council to take on its political, legal and humanitarian responsibilities under Chapter 7 and to act promptly to stop the brutal aggression by the Israeli occupation and its violations which threaten the prospects for achieving a just, lasting and comprehensive peace in the region and hinder the implementation of the two-state solution. At the same time, this resolution has appreciated the efforts of Islamic Republic of Pakistan as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council in mobilizing support for the Palestinian rights to self-determination, justice and peace, and in fostering unity amongst the Islamic Ummah. While addressing this 21st Extraordinary Session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar has condemned Israel's plans for the creation of a so-called Greater Israel, calling it a direct threat to regional and international peace and security. Mr. Ishaq Dar has also reiterated Pakistan's stance for immediate, permanent and unconditional ceasefire across Gaza. Let me quickly bring in our esteemed panel of guests who are joining both in the studio as well as online to talk about this particular burning issue and the developments regarding it. In the studio, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Air Commodore retired Basit Raza Abbasi. He is senior analyst. Mr. Abbasi, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in this studio at the same time, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Ahmed Hassan Awan. He's foreign affairs expert. Mr. Awan, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Abbasi, let's begin with this particular specific attack on the Nasr Hospital. We have also seen there has been a systematic campaign on the part of Israeli regime and its occupation forces in the Gaza Strip. So far, the Committee to Protect Journalists says that 197 journalists have been killed in this brutal aggression by Israeli forces over there in the Gaza Strip. Now, there comes a statement by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in which he apparently regrets and says these attacks were a tragic mishap. At the same time, the Israeli military says that it regrets harm to uninvolved individuals and does not target journalists. Looking at these two statements, are they in qualification of the ground situation or the reality?
Not at all. The last time, you gave the figure of 190. I think they're close to 200 because there have been people
It's
killed
3 short
before
of
that
200,
also.
197
Yes.
to be exact.
But this is, but last time when there was an attack, like 5-6 journalists of Al Jazeera were killed there. The statement which came out from Israel was that they belonged to Hamas.
Yeah.
The journalists belonged
Yeah.
to Hamas. So every time there's a new story. But how do you cover over 190 deaths, 190 killings? Every time there's a new pretext. So this time I think they have shown some decency by calling it something by mistake. But they have been very arrogant about it. Otherwise, how many times can you commit mistakes? You realize your mistake after killing 200 of those journalists in stages, 5, 10, 20 every time. So this is just a sort of a cover-up, and it doesn't mean anything because their intents are very clear, and they want to sort of annihilate and sort of change the whole structure of Gaza, and they want to sort of push the Palestinians out of there. I mean, they kill them because just to scare them so that they run away from there. But they have no other place to go. And this has been going on for last almost 2 years. It's so unfortunate. There can be many stories, but I think the ground realities are the same, that every day Israel is doing something more brutal than what it did till yesterday.
You're right.
And the world is still quiet about it. They are sort of lip service. There are some odd condemnations, but that doesn't change anything on the ground realities. And you also talked about this movement in Security Council. So just wait for another veto from United States. It will all come to nothing. So all these efforts are there, but they are not leading to any sort of solution. And the annihilation of Palestinians goes unchecked. It's sort of
I'll come to this particular point also. The genocidal act. So we saw the International Court of Justice also when taking up the case brought in by South Africa, talking about and also urging Israel to refrain from committing the acts which are genocidal in nature. I'll come to this particular point also. So far, the death toll, what does that particularly depict when we talk about the displacement on such a massive level? 1.5 million people displaced in that particular territory, as you have mentioned, regarding that process of annihilation on the part of Israeli regime and its illegal occupation forces over there, trying to create that atmosphere of fear and reign of terror. Mr. Awan, looking at this particular attack, as mentioned by Mr. Abbasi already, when 5 Al Jazeera journalists were killed in a brutal attack by Israeli forces, they came up with the justification that they were associated with the Palestinian resistance group Hamas. Now, more of the journalists have been targeted in this particular. Firstly, a hospital has been targeted. Not only journalists, more journalists have lost their lives. Medics have lost their lives. So overall, 21 people lost their lives. And clearly, we see Donald Trump saying that he's not happy. I'll come to that particular aspect. But do you see, when comparing the statement which comes from the Israeli side, is there any sort of a difference? Firstly, they were associating them with Hamas. Now they say that they regret this particular attack and it was a mishap, right? So what's the difference between the two?
I think this is like Mr. Abbasi also said, this is simply a cover-up. They are not serious about their condemnations. This is simply to ease off immediate pressure that comes from Europe and the US. Like you already mentioned, the statements coming from the US president as well. It is just to stave them off, just a cool down period for that for them. Otherwise, we've been seeing what is happening in the last 2 years is actually equivalent to what used to happen in the European medieval era. Lawlessness, absolute chaos. We are actually nosediving into that era once again, this complete erosion of the rules-based order, and the biggest symptom of is the actions and the lack of accountability that the world witnesses in terms of Israeli actions. So I think these condemnations are hollow. They're simply to ease off, stave off immediate pressures. And I also want to add to this that the terms that are being used by the Israeli government, like the endorsement for the Greater Israel, are actually reminding us of the this is in a way a revival of the Nakba 2.0. So we seeing that this will lead to a lot of displacement. I mean, this is a mass starvation policy, a famine, humanitarian crisis. What else? I mean, we can go on for, we've been discussing this for the last 2 years, more than 2 years now almost. So there is no end to this. And I think this is really unfortunate. This is really heartbreaking as well, what is happening in Palestine, and the increasing, the deaf ears of the international community speak volume of that as well.
Now, when we talk about so many journalists losing their lives in this particular entire story of brutality, unprecedented brutality on the part of Israeli regime and its illegal occupation forces against innocent people in Gaza. Now, this is the first genocide that has been shown through those journalists to the entire world. It is happening as we speak right now. So the sacrifices which the journalists or the media workers have actually rendered, do you think in terms of how people have become aware of the kind of brutality that's been unleashed over the last 2 years by this particular illegal regime and its illegal occupation forces, how do you look at that particular aspect?
See, this is the exact consequence of a scenario, of a situation when an actor feels immune from any kind of consequence. See, when we talk about the sacrifice of the media workers, it has to begin with human rights. Israel does not adhere to any human rights regulations or international law for that matter. ICJ's proceedings are ongoing. They've also asked the Israeli government to refrain from the starvation policy, from the to prevent genocidal acts. There also been, the ICC has declared Netanyahu a war criminal for its war crimes. So the point being is that until and unless there is no sense of accountability, these actions, including media workers, hospital staff, medical staff, will go on. And mind you, these journalists who are reporting from the ground realities, telling the world what is happening. Back then in the 1940s, when we talk about the Holocaust, there was no live coverage in that way. It was only revealed after the Allied forces came in. We are now, and at that time, no one ever thought that we will again witness a genocide in our lifetime. But we are still doing that. It is because of the lack of accountability, lack of consequence for Israeli actions. This is the cost the world is now paying in terms of that. And this is unprecedented, unheard of in post-World War II. So this has to draw severe criticism, and until and unless the global community comes together, like we saw in the case of the South African apartheid regime, similar to that, if there is no action, no mechanism like that, Israeli actions will continue to become more emboldened.
I'll come to this particular point, Mr. Awan. Now we are on to enjoy the participant on the video link, Mr. Mansoor Ahmed Khan, is former ambassador. Mr. Khan, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. I hope that you can hear me clearly.
Yes, I can.
Okay, wonderful. Mr. Khan, now we're discussing this resolution passed with the 21st extraordinary session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, in which it has condemned the Israeli aggression, the brutality it has unleashed against the innocent people in Gaza. It has also urged the United Nations Security Council to take prompt action under Chapter 7 to stop the brutal aggression by the Israeli occupation and the violations it has been committing with impunity. What does this particular chapter actually contain, and how the United Nations Security Council can ensure that it actually implements the relevant resolution that it has passed on the Palestinian question?
Thank you very much for your question. If we look at what has happened during the past almost 2 years or 1.5 years since October 2023, after the Hamas attack on Israel, Israeli Zionist leadership under Benjamin Netanyahu have actually progressively used that incident and used the aftermath to realize their designs of creating a greater Israel. And that's why we saw recently, in recent weeks and months, statements from the Israeli leaders, particularly from their finance minister Bezalel Smotrich, pronouncing that Israel's intention to create a greater Israel, to occupy Gaza Strip, to occupy West Bank, and to occupy East Jerusalem, which is already under their occupation. So to consolidate that occupation and create a greater Israel. And that is why this session of the Organization of Islamic Conference was held, at which, as you say, a resolution was adopted. Now the resolution has been adopted. Pakistan has also Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Ishaq has issued a very strong statement rejecting these Israeli plans and reaffirming the creation of an independent state of Palestine along with an independent state of Israel, as has been mandated by the United Nations under the two-state solution of the issue. But this the issue remains that Israel's illegitimate regime since October 2023 has been progressively taking steps in violation of international law, in violation of international humanitarian law. A genocide has been perpetrated, hospitals have been attacked, civilian population is being butchered in constant bombings, and they have been showing time and again to take this moment, to take this opportunity of moving forward on their plans for a greater Israel. Now, greater Israel plans, we know, also include not only these territories, but also have there are claims for inclusion of areas of Jordan, inclusion of areas of Lebanon, and inclusion of areas of Syria. So this is a very alarming development. This is a very alarming plan, and the OIC has rightly adopted a firm resolution asking the United Nations Security Council to take an action again under Chapter 7, because that is the only recourse now available. But the problem is that in United Nations Security Council, the dynamics, political dynamics, geopolitical dynamics are such that an action requiring an action under the Chapter 7 is not likely to be approved by all membership of or all permanent members of the UN Security Council. And we know about these dynamics. We have seen time and again resolutions regarding ceasefire in Gaza, ceasefire in Palestine are being vetoed by United States. So there is a genuine apprehension at the moment in the Islamic countries, and that is why this meeting of the OIC was held as to how to prevent Israel from going into that direction. Now, some kind of international pressure will be required. We have seen some pressure which is developing in European countries, in other United Nations members, which is clearly against Israel going towards letting Israel go in that direction. But as to how current Israeli leadership, Benjamin Netanyahu and his close cabinet members who are supporter of this plan, how they will be prevented from going into that direction is yet to be seen. I think Islamic world will have to also take further, diplomatic outreach measures with all the members of the United Nations Security Council. Some meaningful engagement with the United States is also required to prevent Israel from going into that direction, because it will be a disastrous implication if such a action is taken by Israel in violation of all the United Nations Security Council resolutions, the UN original plan of 1948, the 1967 post-1967 resolutions, which have been calling upon Israel to vacate the areas it occupied in 1967, and then 1991 Oslo Accords. So I think it is now upon the conscience of the international community and for the Islamic countries to continue these efforts, because it's a very serious development.
Right, Mr. Mansoor Ahmed Khan, please stay with us. We'll resume the discussion from here. I have to go for a quick short break, and after this particular break, we'll bring in other participants into the discussion as well. For that, stay tuned. Welcome back to Views on News. In today's show, we are discussing the 21st extraordinary session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of Organized Islamic Cooperation, which has condemned in the strongest possible terms Israel's aggression in the Palestinian territories, including Gaza. We're also taking the understanding regarding to that particular attack which is being carried out by Israeli illegal occupation forces on Nasr Hospital, in which 21 people have lost their lives, including 5 journalists and many medics, which has been widely condemned. And there has been a statement by President Donald Trump regarding that. In the studio, we're honored to be joined by Mr. Air Commodore retired Basit Raza Abbasi, Mr. Ahmed Hassan Awan, and on the video link, Mr. Mansoor Ahmed Khan. Mr. Abbasi, let's go back to that particular point of how they are trying to justify or trying to show the so-called remorse or regret regarding this particular attack when it comes to Israeli authorities. There's another major development as to a Canadian photojournalist, if I'm pronouncing her name, Valerie Zink. She has quit after 8 years from the Reuters news agency, saying, let me quote, when Israel murdered Anas al-Sharif, the Israeli, the Al Jazeera journalist that you were referring to earlier, together with the entire Al Jazeera crew in Gaza City on August the 10th, Reuters chose to publish Israel's entirely baseless claim that al-Sharif was a Hamas operative, one of the countless lies that media outlets like Reuters have dutifully repeated and dignified. Reuters' willingness to perpetuate Israel's propaganda to have not spared their own reporters from Israel's genocide. 5 more journalists, including Reuters cameraman Hussam al-Masri, were among 20 people killed. Now, this particular attack she is now referring to, this morning in another attack on Nasr Hospital, it was what's known as a double tap strike, in which Israel bombs a civilian target like a school or a hospital, waits for the medics, rescue teams and journalists to arrive, and then strikes again. Now, there are 2 very fundamental questions associated with this particular development. Firstly, she has resigned after 8 years of association on this particular basis that agencies or the media outlets like Reuters have tried to perpetuate what Israel is trying to do over there. And also referring to this particular phenomenon of a double tap. When the rescue workers come there, they make first strike. When rescue workers come, doctors come, medics come, and journalists come, they strike again. Your reaction to both of them separately?
Actually, I'll talk first on the second part that you said, that this double tap. So this is actually a very, very sort of planned maneuver. This is not something which happens by chance. And there's a pattern. It's not the first time it happened. It always happens like that. And you talk of brutalities, I mean, every day there's a new dimension to those brutalities. So I think this is just, there is no justification for it. And Israel doesn't offer any justification normally. This is the first time they have said that perhaps it has happened by mistake. But actually it's all a sort of well planned, like you said, that it happens in 2 steps. So by chance things happen in one go only. They don't follow a regular pattern. And this is exactly followed the same old pattern. So I don't give any credence to Israeli statements. They're not unreliable. I mean,
this particular double tap, this reference is made by that photojournalist from Canada. Right?
I'll comment on that. Actually, we must salute all these young journalists. Most of them who died there are young people, and they boldly go to their. Actually, they walk to their graves because they know that probably they won't be coming back from there. Each one of them must be sort of thinking that this is the last that I've seen my near and dear ones. But still they go into that sort of hell which is being created there. Just to show the world what's happening there. Because if these guys were not there, if they had not risked their lives, perhaps world wouldn't have known that speedily what's happening there. Although there are so many other ways from which the news trickle out. But it's their heroic struggle which actually shows it every day. In the remote, far remote hope that world conscience will awake, but unfortunately, so long there those bold heroic sacrifices seem to be going in vain. Not totally. but
for now,
partially.
for
Because
now, or because I mean, the journalists have been killed, they've been maimed. Now we've seen this sort of a sacrifice also, that somebody mustering that courage and strength to resign, right?
I was coming to that.
Yeah. So this sort of a sacrifice, don't you think it would lead us to somewhere where this sacrifice won't be considered going in vain, as you mentioned?
I was just coming to that. So the difference, what the effort, the difference what has made is the conscience of the world, humanity has actually woken up. And then in the Western capitals there have been demonstrations. I think a few days back, day before yesterday, there was a very huge demonstration in Australia. I think it was yesterday. I mean, so many people are protesting, but it's only at the people's level. The governments, they are either not doing anything, they are looking the other way. I'm talking of the powerful governments, the Western governments at large, or merely lip service. Like, what is lip service? France says that we'll accept the Palestinian state in September. Why September? If you think they are doing some atrocities, they are committing genocide, they are committing those heinous acts, why not today? Why you have to wait for a month that General Assembly, the whole session should take place, and there you will declare boldly in the Committee of Nations very proudly that, well, we have taken something, we show something. This is no action, because does it deter Israel? It doesn't. So what is the meaning of all this? You are actually trying to fool your own populace who are actually feeling uneasy, and they are rising it and they are showing there. And this journalist whom you mentioned, this is just one of those, the people, because she couldn't sort of control her conscience, that because it was demanding to get out of this disease organization, which sort of reports such brutalities, and it sugarcoats them. So I think she is not the only one. There are many people who are rising, but unfortunately, it's not sort of reaching up to the government levels.
Right, Mr. Awan. Firstly, how do you look at this particular relation?
I just wanted to add to it that
in the Western media's culpability.
This
she refers to in
this
her
is something
post.
that already you mentioned before as well, that you talked about this in minor detail, that this is actually a symptom of the lack of or the collapse of the credibility of the Western media outlets in terms of the genocide. That is why state narratives don't hold. That is why people are protesting. That is why social media's influence in informing us as to what is happening in ground reality has become so much more important. So I think in many ways, mainstream outlets like you mentioned, Reuters and others like that, have lost credibility, have lost the trust of the people. I mean, the biggest thing that media does is tell the people, informs them, right? And if that information is biased, is based on racist bias, is based on covering up genocides, and automatically people like her will stand up. They will realize the truth. They will realize the lies that that are being sold to the public, and to ensure that back home people don't get the true picture. That is why social media's role in this entire scenario in the last 2 years has become so important. I've seen journalists tweeting, posting pictures that this might be the last message before they die, and that's actually, like Mr. Abbasi said, it's heroic. The fact that they are willing to go into that zone, and the reason why Israel is doing is that because their intentions are being revealed.
Right.
That is what reason that is Israel continues to target these journalists, because they do not want the world to recognize or understand that what their intentions are. It's a cover up basically. And in terms of the role of the governments as we speak, rightly mentioned by Mr. Abbasi, why is France waiting for September? Why not now? I feel that these governments are using their positions on, and this is so unfortunate, this is my view, they're playing politics on the genocide, using that as leverage against the US, because there is a clear US-European Union rift in terms of over Ukraine, over genocides, over tariffs, and so many other issues. So they're using it as a ploy for their political leverage. This is so unfortunate.
Okay, so regarding as to when we look at this particular resolution passed by the 21st session of CFM and OIC, the responsibility of the United Nations Security Council, what I understand from it, happens to be on two fronts primarily now. Firstly, under Chapter 7, which has been referred to in this particular resolution, it needs to take some measures in concrete terms in order to stop Israel's aggression. And also when it comes to its plans, which have been proven by the statements by Israeli Prime Minister as well as the Foreign Minister regarding their vision of Greater Israel. Now, as far as using its mandate, the Security Council of the United Nations, regarding stopping Israel from its aggression, under Chapter 7 of its charter, how do you think that could be done? And secondly, how can it ensure that Israel doesn't go with that Greater Israel agenda?
See, first of all, when you talk about the Security Councils and UN Chapter 7 you specifically mentioned, I mentioned at the beginning of the program that we need to establish a kind of mechanism which is similar to that apartheid mechanism that was used against South Africa.
How was that done?
I mean, that was because
go a little in detail regarding that.
The point is that, again, we saw in that case as well, it was basically continuation of colonial policies, segregation of the blacks and the whites, the minority government ruling over the majority, depriving them of their basic human rights. As a result of that, the international community came together, isolated South Africa completely, trade-wise, economically, financially, diplomatically, politically. That is what ultimately that government had to step down. Mandela was released, and ultimately normalcy was restored. And in process, they also gave up the nuclear program, by the way, right? So there was a lot of pressure in that way. So in terms of this, Chapter 7, by the way, also talks about use of force. But short stop of that, the use of sanctions is there. Why isn't the world using sanctions against Israel? Why isn't the 28 countries that European Union condemned so ferociously against Israeli action starvation, why do they simultaneously continue to have trade while condemnation? Why don't they stop that bilateral trade with Israel? They continue, even including, you'll be surprised, Ireland, which is seemingly a big supporter of the Palestine statehood, continues to carry out trade with Israel. This double standards is the reason.
So the option, if those two options are used, the use of force or the option of sanctions, do both of them also require a resolution by the United Nations Security Council?
Definitely, that is the case.
Of course, if that is the requirement, so any resolution that has come before the United Nations Security Council for a ceasefire that has been vetoed by the US. So do you think the option of use of force under Chapter 7 or the use of sanctions under Chapter 7 would pass through the United Nations Security Council?
Unlikely. And again, let me make a comment over here, and let's call spade a spade. USA has been in this entire scenario. I mean, the idea of honest broker is mythical. It has been the enabler of this genocide, complicit in these Israeli actions. We have to realize this. In fact, President Trump has gone on to recognize Jerusalem as the state capital of Israel, right? So we have to, lay out the facts very clearly. Secondly, you mentioned Security Council. Yes, US will veto is once again. Even though the other 4 countries, Russia, the P5 countries, I'm talking the other 4 countries, Russia, China, UK and France, have gained softer corners for Palestine statehood. But despite that, the veto from the US will do nothing, will sort of end in nothing. So this is the reason why I'm saying that countries like the US need to, also be pressurized.
Very quickly, whether that particular announcement officially happens during September by France, being one of the P5, don't you think it's going to have a significance on the world stage?
See, like I said,
because one of the P5 is recognized.
Even if you assume that if it happens, when it was announced by France, followed by Australia, even the UK and other countries also followed up, did that restrict Israeli actions? It in fact gave them a reason and criticizing those governments that you're rewarding terrorism, and it enabled them to carry out more actions. It actually sort of, like we talked about initially in the program, that the Hamas episode is sort of back, seems age old. Now it is giving them new fuel to carry out these activities, right? This is the reason why Israeli actions remain. And in terms of what the other countries' alternatives do we have, I think firstly the Muslim countries have to come together. Yes, the OIC happened, but they have to rethink about the Abrahamic Accords. Because these are the few options that Muslim world at least has, or the global South that has.
Right, I get your point. Mr. Khan, what is the way forward if a resolution at the United Nations Security Council regarding a ceasefire couldn't pass because of the veto of the United States of America, referring to Chapter 7, the options of use of force or the use of sanctions to stop Israel from its aggression going ahead with that. If those resolutions are not going to be passed, what's the way forward? What are the alternatives then?
Options for the Islamic countries are to exert pressure on Israel on four fronts. First, number one is the unprecedented atrocities or brutalities that Israel has committed, is committing. 60,000 people have been killed. Indiscriminate bombings have taken place. Buildings have been razed. Children collecting aid have been targeted. And children in general have been killed in large numbers. And we see the health of the children living there, malnourished children, children not getting food. We have not seen these kind of images even during the World War II. And international community, including the Western civilization, people living in the West are also criticizing Israel for these kind of atrocities. And this pressure is, I think, should be increased. Second is the Islamic countries' own action. We have seen OIC resolution. We have seen statement of the 31 OIC and Arab countries condemning Israeli action and asking action by the UN against Israel. But dilemma is that no OIC or Islamic country is permanent member of the UN. There are some non-permanent temporary members of the UN Security Council. Pakistan is currently a non-permanent member. But then again, when some action-oriented thing comes like an action under Chapter 7, then it requires UNS vote of 5 permanent members of the UNSC, which we know that because of the geopolitics doesn't materialize or doesn't realize. Then the third pressure is from Israel, within Israel. And within Israel, there are moderates, there are people driven by conscience who in large numbers are opposing Israeli government's actions, Israeli government's atrocities. But lobby in power is a Zionist lobby currently, which is trying to use this opportunity, use these incidents in the last 1.5 years towards the objective of greater Israel. So how dynamics evolve in Israel, domestic political dynamics evolve in Israel in terms of changing the current government of Benjamin Netanyahu can be one of the factors. And the last and fourth factor is that pressure on US and pressure on US allies has to be increased. Yes, US has currently until now hesitated or has not taken any action in the UN Security Council against Israel, but pressure is there on the US. Pressure is there from within the US, pressure is there from the US allies. We have seen actions and statements from UK, EU, France, Australia, Germany, other countries. These countries are not happy. These countries have been generally standing with human rights situations all over the world, and they are not happy whatever is happening in Palestine at the hands of Israel. So I think these are the pressures which Islamic world can use. The procedural actions from the United Nations Security Council don't look likely in the current political dynamics of the Security Council, global political dynamics. But these are the pressures which the Islamic countries should continue to increase. Saudi Arabia and key Islamic countries in the neighborhood of Palestine should actually be playing more, I think, vigorous and more active role.
I get your point. Unfortunately, we are short of time. It was an insightful discussion with you, Mr. Mansoor Ahmed Khan from Abbasi, joining us on the video link. Thank you very much for taking time. In the studio, we were joined by Mr. Air Commodore, retired Raza Abbasi, senior analyst. Mr. Abbasi, thank you very much for your time also. And Mr. Ahmed Hassan Awan, foreign affairs expert. Mr. Awan, thank you very much for your time also, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.